The ball left the club head clean, a perfect arc against the Spanish sky. It landed soft on the 18th green, rolling to a stop 6 feet from the pin. Bing Crosby straightened up, handed the iron to his caddy, and smiled that easy smile. He'd just shot par. His partner, Manuel Piñero, a Spanish professional half his age, walked over and extended his hand. They shook. Bing said 5 words. That was a great round. Then his face changed, not dramatically, just a flicker, a tightening around the eyes. He took 1 step toward the clubhouse. His knees buckled. He went down. The grass was soft, but the fall was final. Bing Crosby was dead before the caddy dropped the golf bag. It was October 14, 1977, a Friday afternoon at La Moraleja Golf Club, just outside Madrid. The temperature was mild, the sky was clear. Bing Crosby had just finished the round he'd been looking forward to all week. He was 74 years old. He'd spent 50 years entertaining the world. He'd sold more records than anyone in history. He'd won an Academy Award. He'd made White Christmas the most popular song ever recorded. But none of that mattered to him right then. What mattered was golf. What mattered was the game. What mattered was finishing what he started. And he had finished. Perfectly. On his terms. Then he left. To understand why Bing Crosby died the way he did, you need to understand what golf meant to him. It wasn't a hobby. It wasn't exercise. It wasn't networking. Golf was the place where Bing Crosby could strip away the performance, the persona, the pressure, and just exist. No microphones, no cameras, no expectations. Just a man, a club, and a ball. The simplicity of it appealed to him in a way nothing else did. Bing had started playing in the 1930s when he was already famous. Back then, golf was still a gentleman's game, reserved for the wealthy and the connected. Bing fit right in. He was calm, deliberate, patient. He didn't slam clubs when he missed a shot. He didn't curse or complain. He'd just line up the next one and try again. His playing partners said he had the same temperament on the course that he had on stage, unshakable. By the 1940s, Bing was playing nearly every day he wasn't working. He'd wake up early, sometimes before dawn, and head to Lakeside Golf Club in Los Angeles. He'd play 18 holes before most people had their breakfast. Then he'd go to the studio, record a song or film a scene, and if there was time, he'd play another 9 holes in the evening. Golf was his rhythm, his meditation, his escape. In the 1950s, Bing started hosting a professional golf tournament in Pebble Beach. The Bing Crosby National Pro-Am became one of the most prestigious events in golf. Celebrities and professional golfers played together, and Bing was at the center of it all. But he never grandstanded. He never used the tournament to promote himself. He just loved the game and wanted to share it. By the 1970s, Bing had slowed down. His career was winding down. His health wasn't what it used to be. He'd had some heart trouble, nothing catastrophic, but enough to make his doctors nervous. They told him to take it easy, maybe cut back on the golf. Bing listened politely, then he kept playing. October 1977. London had been the week before. The audiences were enthusiastic, but Bing felt tired. His voice wasn't as strong as it used to be. His energy lagged. But he pushed through. He always pushed through. After the final concert in Brighton on October 10th, Bing had a few days off before flying back to the States. He decided to spend them in Madrid. Not for sightseeing, not for rest, for golf. La Moraleja Golf Club was one of the finest courses in Spain. Bing had played there before and loved it. When he called ahead to arrange a round, the club was honored. They assigned him a caddy. They lined up a playing partner. They made sure everything was perfect. Bing arrived on the morning of October 14th, wearing his usual golf attire. Slacks, a cardigan, a hat to block the sun. He looked older than his years. His face was lined. His movements were slower, but his eyes were clear. He was ready. His playing partner that day was Manuel Piñero, a young Spanish professional who would go on to have a successful career. Piñero was nervous. He was about to play golf with Bing Crosby, the Bing Crosby. But Bing put him at ease immediately. He shook Piñero's hand, smiled, and said something about the weather being perfect. No pretense, no celebrity, just a man who wanted to play golf. They teed off around mid-morning. The course was quiet. A few other groups were scattered across the 18 holes, but Bing and Piñero had space. The first few holes went smoothly. Bing's swing was measured. He wasn't trying to crush the ball. He was trying to place it, control it. His short game was still sharp. He chipped and putted with precision. Piñero played well too, and the two fell into a comfortable rhythm. Around the sixth hole, Bing paused to catch his breath. Piñero asked if he was okay. Bing waved him off. "Just getting old," he said. "Nothing to worry about." They kept playing. Bing didn't mention the tightness in his chest. He didn't mention that he felt heavier than usual. He just focused on the next shot. By the back nine, Bing seemed to relax even more. He started telling stories. Nothing rehearsed, just memories. He talked about playing golf with Bob Hope, about the time he and Hope had gotten lost on a course in Ireland and ended up playing in the rain for 4 hours. He talked about his kids, about how he wished he'd spent more time with them when they were young, about how golf had taught him patience in a way nothing else could. Piñero listened. He didn't interrupt. He sensed that Bing wasn't performing. He was just talking, unloading, reflecting. There was a quietness to it, a finality that Piñero wouldn't understand until later. The 17th hole was a par 3. Bing's tee shot landed just short of the green. He chipped on and two putted for par. As they walked to the 18th tee, Bing looked out over the course. The sun was starting to dip. The shadows were lengthening. Everything was golden. Bing took a deep breath. He looked content. The 18th hole was a par 4, a straightforward finishing hole. Bing drove the ball down the fairway. Not long, but straight. His second shot landed on the green. Piñero's approach was closer to the pin, but Bing's ball sat clean with a good line. They walked onto the green together. Piñero putted first and made his par. Then it was Bing's turn. Bing stood over the ball for a moment. He read the line. 6 feet, slight break to the left. He'd made this putt 1,000 times in his life. He addressed the ball, drew the putter back, struck it clean. The ball rolled true. It caught the left edge of the cup, circled, and dropped. Par. Bing straightened up. He looked at Piñero and smiled. That was a great round. His voice was calm, satisfied. Piñero smiled back and extended his hand. They shook, firm but not forceful, a handshake between two men who'd shared something simple and good. Then Bing's face changed. It wasn't pain, it wasn't panic, it was just a shift, a recognition. His hand slipped from Piñero's. He took one step toward the clubhouse. His knees gave out. He fell forward onto the grass. Piñero caught him partway down, easing the fall. He called for help. The caddy dropped the bag and ran. Within seconds, people were rushing onto the green. Bing didn't move. His eyes were closed. His breathing had stopped. Piñero knelt beside him, trying to find a pulse. There was none. Someone started chest compressions. Someone else ran to call an ambulance. But everyone there knew. You could see it in their faces. Bing Crosby was gone. The ambulance arrived within 15 minutes. Paramedics worked on him for another 20. They tried everything, but there was nothing to be done. Bing had suffered a massive heart attack. Instantaneous, painless, final. He was pronounced dead at the scene, on the 18th green, 6 feet from the hole he'd just paired. The news spread quickly. By evening it was on every radio station, every television broadcast. Bing Crosby, the voice of America, had died playing golf in Spain. The world mourned. Tributes poured in. Presidents, actors, musicians, fans, everyone had a story about Bing. Everyone had a memory. But the people who knew him best weren't surprised by how he died. Bob Hope, when he heard the news, said something that captured it perfectly. He went out doing what he loved. That's the only way Bing would have wanted it. Bing's family was devastated, but they understood too. His wife Catherine flew to Spain immediately. When she saw him lying in the hospital, she didn't break down. She touched his hand and whispered something nobody else could hear. Later, she told reporters that Bing had lived exactly the way he wanted, on his terms, with dignity, with control. The funeral was held in Los Angeles. Thousands attended. Frank Sinatra was there, Dean Martin, Rosemary Clooney. Bob Hope delivered the eulogy. He spoke about Bing's talent, his generosity, his humor. But what he kept coming back to was Bing's calmness, his ability to move through life without chaos, without drama. Hope said that Bing never seemed rushed, never seemed worried. He just lived. And when it was time to go, he went. After the funeral, Piñero gave an interview to a Spanish newspaper. He was still shaken. He described the round in detail, how Bing had played well, how he'd been calm, how he'd smiled after making that last putt. Piñero said something that stayed with people. He said, "I've played golf with many great men, But Bing Crosby was the only one who seemed completely at peace. That peace was what defined Bing, not just on the golf course, but in everything. He didn't chase fame. He didn't chase legacy. He did his job. He sang his songs. He made his movies. And when the work was done, he stepped away. He didn't need the applause to continue. He didn't need the validation. He had his family. He had his friends. He had his golf. And in the years after his death, people tried to analyze Bing's life. They wrote books, made documentaries, examined his career. Some focused on his success. Some focused on his flaws, his complicated relationship with his children, his drinking in the early years, his reserved nature that some mistook for coldness. But what those analyses often missed was the simplicity of who Bing was. He was a man who understood that life was finite, that control mattered, that showing up and doing your best was enough. Golf taught him that. Every round was a lesson in acceptance. You hit a bad shot, you moved on. You hit a good shot, you appreciated it but didn't linger. You kept playing until the course was finished. Then you shook hands and walked away. That's what Bing did on October 14, 1977. He played the course. He finished the round. He shook hands. And then he walked away. Not from the game but from life itself. Clean, complete, on his own terms. There's a photograph from that day, taken just hours before he died. Bing is standing on one of the middle holes, club in hand, looking out over the fairway. The light is soft. His expression is relaxed. He looks like a man who's exactly where he wants to be. No tension, no fear, just presence. That photograph captures something essential about Bing Crosby. He wasn't performing. He wasn't pretending. He was just there, living the moment, not thinking about the past, not worrying about the future, just being. When Catherine Crosby was asked years later how she wanted people to remember Bing, she didn't talk about his records or his movies. She said, "I want them to remember that he was kind, that he was steady, that he knew what mattered, and that when it was time to go, he didn't fight it, he accepted it, just like he accepted everything else in life." The 18th green at La Moraleja Golf Club became a quiet pilgrimage site for Bing's fans. For years, people would visit. They'd stand where he fell. They'd look at the hole where he made his last putt. Some would bring flowers. Some would bring golf balls and leave them as tributes. The club never made a big deal of it. They didn't put up a plaque or a monument. They just let people come, let them remember. In 1978, the Bing Crosby National Pro-Am continued without him. Bob Hope hosted. The tournament went on, but everyone felt the absence. Before the first round, Hope stood at the first tee and said a few words. He talked about Bing's love for the game, his respect for the players, his belief that golf was about more than competition. It was about character. Hope ended his remarks with something simple. He said, "Bing would want us to play, so let's play." And they did, because that's what Bing would have done. He wouldn't have stopped. He wouldn't have made it dramatic. He would have kept going, one shot at a time. There's a lesson in how Bing Crosby died, though it's not one he would have articulated himself. He wasn't a philosopher. He wasn't a teacher. He was just a man who lived according to a simple code. Do your work. Treat people with respect. Don't make a fuss. Enjoy the simple things. And when the end comes, accept it with the same grace you tried to bring to everything else. That last putt on the 18th green wasn't just a golf shot. It was a punctuation mark, a final statement. Bing Crosby had spent 74 years trying to do things well, trying to finish what he started. And on that October afternoon in Spain, he did exactly that. He finished the round. He made the putt. He shook hands. And then he was done. No encores, no curtain calls, just a clean exit, the way he'd always wanted it. Manuel Piñero never forgot that day. Decades later, when he was asked about playing golf with Bing Crosby, he would get quiet. He'd think for a moment. Then he'd say, "I watched a man die in peace. I didn't understand it then, but I do now. He was ready. He'd done what he came to do." That's what people miss when they talk about Bing Crosby's death. They focus on the tragedy, the suddenness, the loss, but they miss the grace, the completion, the fact that Bing went out exactly the way he would have chosen, doing something he loved, surrounded by beauty, at the end of a good round. There are worse ways to leave. The morning had started unremarkably. Bing woke at 7 in his hotel room at the Euro building in Madrid. He'd slept well, better than he had in months. He showered, shaved, and dressed in his golf clothes. He ordered breakfast, toast, eggs, coffee. He ate slowly, reading the International Herald Tribune. Catherine had stayed back in California. The night before, October 13th, they'd talked for 20 minutes. He told her about the concert in Brighton, how the audience had been warm. She asked if he was tired. He said yes, but in a good way. Before hanging up, Catherine asked what he was doing the next day. Golf, Bing said. I've got a round at La Moraleja. She laughed. Of course you do. Be careful. He promised he wouldn't overdo it. Then he said, I love you, and hung up. It was the last conversation they'd ever have. After breakfast, Bing sat in the hotel lobby waiting for his car. He didn't read. He didn't make small talk. He just sat, looking out the window at the Madrid traffic. A businessman walked by, recognized him, and stopped. Mr. Crosby? Bing looked up and smiled. The man asked for an autograph. Bing obliged. They chatted for a minute. Then the man thanked him and walked away. The drive to La Moraleja took 30 minutes. Bing sat in the back seat silent. His mind was already on the course, already visualizing the holes. The driver eventually gave up trying to make conversation and turned on the radio. A Spanish station was playing American jazz. Bing listened but didn't comment. When they arrived at the club, Bing tipped the driver generously and walked to the clubhouse. The staff greeted him warmly. They offered him coffee, a locker, anything he needed. Bing thanked them and asked where he could find his caddy. Manuel Piñero arrived shortly after. He was polite, professional, clearly honored to be playing with Bing. They exchanged pleasantries, discussed the course conditions, and agreed on a friendly match. Nothing serious, no money, just golf. They walked to the first tee. Bing's swing was smooth but not powerful. He'd never been a long hitter. Even in his prime, he relied on accuracy over distance. Now at 74, his drives barely reached 200 yards, but they were straight, and in golf, straight beats long every time. The first hole was a par 4. Bing hit a conservative tee shot down the middle. His approach landed on the front of the green. 2 putts, par. Piñero birdied. Bing congratulated him. No ego, no disappointment, just a nod of respect. By the 4th hole, Bing's rhythm was established. He wasn't thinking about mechanics. He wasn't trying to fix his swing. He was just playing. This was the state he loved most, the state where golf became meditation, where the mind quieted and the body took over. Piñero noticed it too. He later told reporters that Bing seemed completely absorbed, not distant, not distracted, just present. Every shot mattered, but no shot consumed him. He'd hit the ball, watch it land, and move on. No analysis, no second guessing, just acceptance. Around the 8th hole, Bing started talking more. He asked Piñero about his career, where he'd played, what tournaments he'd won. Piñero answered modestly, but Bing pressed him. He wanted to know the details. Piñero talked about growing up in Spain, about learning golf from his father, about the dream of playing professionally. Bing listened, really listened. He didn't interrupt, didn't redirect the conversation back to himself. When Piñero finished, Bing said something simple. You've worked hard. That matters more than talent. Piñero would remember those words for the rest of his life. The back nine started under clouds. The temperature dropped slightly. Bing pulled his cardigan tighter but didn't complain. He'd played in worse conditions. That was Bing's approach to everything. You started something, you finished it. No excuses. On the 13th hole, a par 3, Bing's tee shot came up short. The ball landed in a bunker. He climbed down into the sand, studied the lie, and blasted out cleanly. The ball landed 3 feet from the pin. He made the putt for par. Piñero said that was a great save. Bing shrugged. Got lucky, but he hadn't. It was skill. 50 years of skill. By the 16th hole, Bing's breathing was heavier. Not labored, but noticeable. He paused more between shots. The caddy asked if he wanted water. Bing accepted, and drank slowly. He didn't mention the tightness in his chest, the dull ache that had started around the 10th hole. He'd felt it before. His doctors had told him it was angina, a warning, but Bing had ignored warnings his whole life. The 17th hole played long. Bing's drive was solid, but left him a long approach. He chose a 5-wood and swung smoothly. The ball landed short of the green. He chipped on, 2-putted for par, standard, unremarkable, exactly how Bing liked it. Walking to the 18th tee, Bing paused to look back over the course. The sun had broken through the clouds. Everything was bathed in golden light. Piñero walked ahead, giving Bing space. For a moment, Bing just stood there, taking it in. The grass, the trees, the sky. He wasn't thinking about death. He wasn't thinking about endings. He was just appreciating the moment. Then he walked to the tee, pulled his driver, and hit his final drive, straight down the middle. Not long, but straight. The news reached Bob Hope first. He was at home in Los Angeles when the phone rang. It was a producer from NBC. "Bob, I'm sorry to tell you this, but Bing died today, in Spain, playing golf." Hope didn't respond immediately. He just held the phone. Then he said, "Of course he did. Where else would he go?" Hope spent the rest of the day making calls, to Catherine, to Bing's children, to friends. Everyone needed to talk. Everyone needed to process. Hope became the unofficial spokesman for Bing's legacy. But privately, Hope was devastated. He and Bing had known each other for 40 years. They'd done road pictures together, USO tours, golf tournaments. Hope had always assumed he'd go first, but Bing had beaten him to it. When Hope finally sat down to write Bing's eulogy, he struggled. How do you summarize a life like Bing's? Hope wrote draft after draft. He kept coming back to the same idea. Bing was a professional. He did his job. He didn't complain. He showed up, every time. The funeral service was held at St. Paul the Apostle Catholic Church in Los Angeles on October 18th. The church was packed. Over 1,000 people attended. Outside, crowds lined the streets. Inside, the atmosphere was heavy, sad, but also respectful. There was no wailing, no theatrics, just quiet grief. Rosemary Clooney sang. Her voice cracked several times, but she pushed through. She sang Ave Maria, one of Bing's favorite hymns. Catherine sat in the front row, flanked by Bing's children. She wore black and kept her composure. She'd cried privately. Now, in public, she held herself together. That's what Bing would have wanted. Hope delivered the eulogy. He spoke for 15 minutes. He told stories, made people laugh, made them cry, but mostly, he made them remember. He talked about Bing's talent, but also his humility, about his success, but also his simplicity. Near the end, Hope said something that resonated. Bing never tried to be a legend. He just tried to do good work. And somehow, by not trying, he became something greater than any of us could have planned. That's the mystery of Bing Crosby. After the service, Bing was laid to rest at Holy Cross Cemetery in Culver City. The burial was private, only family attended. Catherine stood at the graveside and placed a single white rose on the casket. She didn't speak, she didn't need to. In the weeks following Bing's death, tributes poured in from around the world. President Jimmy Carter issued a statement calling Bing an American treasure. Frank Sinatra gave an interview where he said, "Bing was the father of my career. Everything I learned about singing, I learned from listening to him." But perhaps the most telling tribute came from an unexpected source. A letter arrived at Catherine's house a month after the funeral. It was from a man in Iowa, a farmer. He'd never met Bing, never seen him perform live, but he'd listened to Bing's records his entire life. He wrote that Bing's voice had gotten him through the Depression, through the war, through the death of his wife. He wrote that he couldn't imagine a world without Bing's voice, and now he didn't have to imagine it. He was living in it. Catherine read the letter and wept. Not because it was sad, but because it was true. Bing's voice had been a constant for millions of people, a source of comfort, of joy, of stability, and now it was gone. The Bing Crosby National Pro-Am continued every year at Pebble Beach. Eventually, it was renamed for sponsorship reasons, but everyone still called it Bing's Tournament. Players would walk the course and tell stories about him. The stories became part of the tournament's fabric. In 1982, 5 years after Bing's death, La Moraleja Golf Club quietly installed a small plaque near the 18th green. It didn't say much, just Bing Crosby's name, the date, and a single line. He finished the round. The club didn't announce it, didn't hold a ceremony. They just put it there for anyone who wanted to find it. People did find it. Golfers from around the world would make the pilgrimage. They'd play the course, finish at 18, and stand where Bing had stood. Some would make the same putt he'd made. Some would just stand there in silence, paying respects. Years later, Gary Crosby, one of Bing's sons, visited La Moraleja. He played the course with some friends. When he reached the 18th green, he saw the plaque. He stood there for a long time. When Gary finally putted out, He bent down and touched the plaque. Then he stood, looked out over the course, and said quietly, "You did it right, Dad." The relationship between Bing and his children was complicated. Gary's book, published in 1983, painted Bing as a distant, harsh father. Other children disputed that characterization. The truth was somewhere in between. Bing was a man of his generation. He believed in discipline, in self-reliance. He wasn't warm in the way modern fathers are expected to be, but he wasn't cruel either. He was just Bing, controlled, reserved. What's undeniable is that Bing loved his children. He provided for them, he tried to teach them, he worried about them, but he didn't know how to connect with them emotionally. That skill had been buried under 50 years of performance, of keeping himself in check. Catherine once said that Bing's greatest regret was his relationship with his first 4 sons. He wished he'd been softer, more available, but by the time he realized it, they were grown. All he could do was try to be better with his second family, and by all accounts, he was. Not perfect, but better. The question of legacy haunted Bing's final years, not publicly. He never spoke about it in interviews, but privately, with Catherine, he wondered, what would people remember? Catherine told him not to worry, told him that his work spoke for itself, that millions of people loved him. Bing listened, but wasn't convinced. He just wanted to be remembered as a man who did his job, who tried his best. The day Bing died, White Christmas was playing somewhere in the world. It's been playing somewhere every day since. Over 50 million copies sold. It's the best-selling single of all time. But it's more than that. It's a piece of cultural DNA, a song that evokes a specific feeling, a specific time. That's what Bing understood. Songs aren't just sounds. They're memories. They're emotions. When he sang, he wasn't performing. He was creating a space where people could feel something, could remember something, could hope for something. On the 18th green at La Moraleja, in those final seconds before he collapsed, Bing wasn't thinking about White Christmas. He wasn't thinking about his legacy or his regrets. He was thinking about the putt, about the line, about finishing what he'd started. And when the ball dropped, he felt satisfaction, not pride, not relief, just satisfaction, the quiet knowledge that he'd done what he set out to do. Then his heart stopped, and Bing Crosby, the man who'd spent 74 years trying to do things well, was finished. The round was over. Time to shake hands and walk away. There's a recording of Bing from 1975, 2 years before he died. He's being interviewed about his career. The interviewer asks if he has any regrets. Bing thinks for a moment. Then he says, "I wish I'd been a better father. But other than that, no. I got to do what I loved. I got to make a living at it." How many people can say that? The interviewer presses him. "But what about legacy? What do you want people to remember?" Bing shrugs. "I don't think much about that. I just hope people enjoyed the songs. That's enough." And it was. It is. Bing Crosby didn't need monuments or museums. He didn't need analysis or reappraisal. He just needed the work to stand, the songs to endure. And they have. They do. They will. Somewhere right now, someone is listening to White Christmas. Somewhere, someone is watching one of the road pictures. Somewhere, someone is discovering Bing for the first time and thinking, this is what a singer should sound like. That's Bing's legacy. Not the awards or the sales figures, but the feeling, the connection, the moment when a voice from the past reaches across decades and touches something in the present. On October 14, 1977, Bing Crosby finished his last round of golf with par. He shook hands. He said 5 words. Then he was gone. Quick, clean, complete, the way he would have wanted, the way he'd lived his entire life. No fuss, no drama, just a man who did his job and walked away when it was done.